perhaps the most intrinsically fascinating and complex story that our narrative-loving species has ever tried to tell. But at the same time, it is an elusive one. For while comparing ourselves with apes may help us establish a starting point for our long evolutionary trajectory, it turns out that we modern human beings are not simply an improved version of them. Instead, we are an altogether unprecedented presence on our planet, and explaining the unique has always been a thankless task. Despite the difficulties inherent in trying to explain ourselves, we have a solid foundation on which to start. The past century and a half has witnessed the accumulation of a remarkable fossil record that, although it will never be complete, already gives us a substantial glimpse of the appearances and astonishing diversity of those ancestral and collateral relatives who preceded us. What's more, these human precursors are unusual in having left behind an archaeological record, butchered bones, stone artifacts, living sites, that speaks eloquently of their daily activities and of how those activities became more complex as time progressed. Documenting the huge physical and technological changes that accompanied the long trek from ancient ape to modern human is, at least in principle, a relatively straightforward task. But the secret to the particular kind of success our species enjoys today lies in the very unusual way in which our brains handle information. And mindset is something that is very hard to read from bones or material leavings, at least up to the point at which we have overwhelming evidence for the presence of an intellect equivalent to our own. What is evident, though, is that this final point was reached very late in time, at least compared to the earliest appearance of the human family, although in modern historical terms it was dizzyingly early. Many may find this tardiness rather surprising, because traditionally we have been taught to view the long human story as an extended and gradual struggle from primitiveness toward perfection, in which case we might anticipate finding early harbingers of our later selves. The reality, however, is otherwise, for it is becoming increasingly clear that the acquisition of the uniquely modern sensibility was instead an abrupt and recent event. Indeed, it was an event that took place within the tenure on Earth of humans who looked exactly like us. And the expression of this new sensibility was almost certainly crucially abetted by the invention of what is perhaps the single most remarkable thing about our modern selves: language. This final communicative and cognitive leap is far from the whole story. The underpinnings of the modern body and mind reach far back into the past, and most of this book is devoted to examining the deep foundations on which the amazing human phenomenon was built. For nothing of what we are today would have been possible in the absence of any aspect of our unique history. And although it is in Africa that we find the earliest stirrings of the modern mind, the vagaries of the record are such that it is only when we contemplate the astonishing cave art of Ice Age Europe that we encounter the first evidence of human beings who not only thought as we do, but who left behind an overwhelmingly powerful body of evidence to prove it. Symbolism and the art of the caves. Best exemplified by the famous animal images on the ceilings and walls of caves such as Spain's Altamira and France's Lascaux and Chauvet, the raw power and sophistication of this ancient art is somehow magnified by the knowledge that its painters lived in an unthinkably remote epoch of modern human history. For despite their brilliance in color and concept, these extraordinary works were the product of hunter-gatherers who lived around the peak of the last ice age, between about 35,000 and 10,000 years ago. These were harsh times of cool summers and bitterly long winters, during which trees were often almost entirely banished from a landscape that is thickly wooded today. The antiquity of this art is astonishing, but exposure to it nonetheless makes you fully understand Picasso's alleged remark that the Ice Age painters had left him little to accomplish. Certainly, it's impossible to imagine better evidence that the wonderful and unprecedented human creative spirit was already fully formed at that distant point in modern prehistory. This realization had not come easily. Intuitively, it was difficult for 19th century scientists to accept that the ancient Ice Age inhabitants of southern France and northern Spain had created an artistic tradition, embracing painting, engraving, sculpture, and bas-reliefs that, at its best, had equaled or even exceeded in its power anything achieved since. After the first and among the finest cave paintings were discovered at Altamira in 1870.